This video is on question 10 of the 2012 TSA, and here we're asked which option is the best statement of the flaw in the argument. And this is the passage that we're given. So we're first told that the battery life of laptops means that they cannot be used for a whole long-haul flight without being recharged from an onboard power point. And not all aeroplanes have these onboard power points. Therefore, the author says, laptops shouldn't be allowed as carry-on items for long-haul flights on planes without these onboard power points. And this is regardless of whether these laptops are intended for personal or business use. And the author justifies themselves saying that this is because the laptops will be of limited use and will take up a disproportionate amount of space. So that's the passage. And what are we dealing with here? Well, the first couple of sentences are facts. The first part of the third sentence is a conclusion indicated by the therefore. And the end of the passage consists in a reason for this conclusion. And you might notice that the facts support the reason, and that therefore we could regard the facts as themselves reasons and the reason here as an intermediate conclusion. However, it doesn't matter exactly how we conceive of these sentences, as long as we remember that these support this and this supports that. So let's try and simplify the argument so we can know what's going on. So here I've isolated what I've called the reason and the conclusion. So what is the reason that the author gives for banning laptops as carry-on items in the way the author describes? Well, here the author says that laptops won't be very useful. And they make another point, namely that they take up space. And notice that the author's claim that the laptops aren't very useful is supported by the facts. Namely, that the batteries need to be recharged by these power points, and not all aeroplanes have these power points. So this statement is supported by the facts. And this reason is used to support the conclusion. And what is the conclusion saying? It's saying, therefore, laptops shouldn't be allowed. It's a bit more complicated than this, but for simplicity, this is enough. Now, there doesn't seem to be an obvious flaw with this argument. And so, instead of trying to extract a flaw at this point, let's have a look at the options. So here we have our 5 options, and here we have a summary of the argument. So let's take each option in turn. Option A says that some companies expect their workers to work on long-haul flights. Now, if we look back at the passage, we'll see that the author recommends their banning, regardless of whether they're intended for personal or business use. And as option A only gets at the business use part of the argument, it fails to get at the whole argument, and is therefore unlikely to be the flaw. Now looking at option B, this says that laptops won't be damaged if they're stored in a suitcase in the hold rather than the cabin. Well, if laptops aren't going to be damaged in the hold, this is sort of an argument for saying that they shouldn't be allowed in the cabin. The author can put forward their argument and then reply to the objector, well, if laptops are put in the hold, then they're not going to be damaged, they're going to be safe. And so option B seems to actually strengthen the argument. What about option C? It says that laptops can also run out of battery on short-haul flights. Now, the author only talks about long-haul flights, but they don't explicitly limit their discussion to long-haul flights. That is, it's possible that they could apply the same argument to short-haul flights, or at least a similar argument. And so option C doesn't seem relevant. Looking at option D now, this says that the passenger cannot choose whether they book a flight with an onboard PowerPoint or without one. Well, the fact that they can't choose whether they book a flight with an onboard PowerPoint doesn't seem to affect either premise, and it doesn't seem to affect the conclusion directly. So we can compare option D to each point of the argument to see that it doesn't seem relevant. Lastly, option E. Hopefully this is the right answer, as we have no options left after this one. This says that a passenger could make some use of their laptop even if the battery does run out. In other words, even if the battery runs out after a couple of hours, the passenger can still make use of their laptop in that time. Now, if we compare this option to the argument,